Kia ora, this is Coffee with a Coach. My name's Doug Courtney, and this week we're talking to a person that's played at the highest level in two sports. Off air, she told me that she also had a little hand in netball. I'd like to welcome Coach Leanne Walker. Hey, Coach, can you tell us how you got into the game, how you navigated playing at the high level with two sports, and also how did you get into coaching?
So touch was my summer sport and basketball was my winter sport. And they actually didn't overlap too much, which was really nice. So by the end of a touch season, I was into basketball and then vice versa. Really enjoyed that. Great way to stay fit the whole year round. So, there were no highs and lows in terms of levels of fitness, I didn't think. You just stayed fit the whole time. And what I liked about it too are different groups of people, different coaches, and in both codes, obviously, playing at a high level, everybody pretty much like-minded, so they wanted to do well, they wanted to train hard. So I was lucky in that regard. And then how did I did the netball, as you said. I played a lot of sports. I mean, and that started from, when you went to, at a little primary school in Opotiki called Omarumatu Primary, and you didn't have enough kids to make up the full team, so the girls would play rugby, the boys would play netball, we'd play hockey, just everything and anything that was going. And your parents encouraged it because it kept you out of trouble. So transitioning, I guess, with the high level sport, it's when I went to Hamilton, moved to Hamilton and went to Teachers College, and met some people there and was able to pursue those sports to a high level. And probably the people I met there to this day are some of my, and we'll talk a little bit about it later, my biggest support people in the background or my mentors. So, being involved in those codes early in my time at, first of all, Teachers College and uni, has extended into using them as support people now. Transitioning into coaching as a teacher, you are expected, especially if you're a PE teacher, to be involved in helping young teams. So with my teaching background, got involved in coaching young students quite early in the piece. And then once I started having my own children, taking a bit more interest in and getting a little bit more serious about becoming a better coach, and just trying to help them develop and the people they were playing with develop. And then into the rep space and women's space, I transitioned from playing into player coaching and then into coaching. So for a period of time in both touch and basketball, I sort of was player coaching for a bit of time. You would, if you talk to my coaches back then, it's probably because, as a point guard, you're running things on the court anyway. And as a touch player playing in the middles, you always had an opinion about how things could work, better for your team. So, yeah, transitioned from player into player coaching and then coaching.
That's definitely a whirlwind. It goes from playing and then into coaching. How much influence, obviously, playing at the high level with basketball and touch? Obviously, you saw the coaching at that level. Did that influence you in the way you deliver material, or has that evolved over your years?
Yep. So, every team that I was involved in from, club level right through to national level, I always had, in the back of my mind, watch these coaches because you're going to learn something off every single coach. And I 100% believe that, even if they were useless, because then you'd think, I will never do it that way. It's a learning, right?
Yeah, that's the learning.
So I was always, that's right. And you've got to be open-minded to that. And, every situation you get, there's an opportunity to learn something. Yep. So that's how I guess I progressed through the coaching side of it. Has my coaching changed? Probably as I've got into the higher levels, there's a lot more technical stuff. But I guess with my background again in coaching and teaching, especially in junior space, so much development on just fundamental movement patterns and just fundamental skills and foundational work. And even as like an assistant coach with the Tall Ferns, I believe my biggest impact is with the babies, with the juniors, and building a base so that by the time they come through to us, they're on the right path and they're learning the right things, because it's hard to unteach or unlearn something. So right from the get-go, you need to be learning the right sort of technique. So as my coaching has developed, fundamentals and foundational stuff is really important, but I think now I focus a little bit more, and again, still learning, always learning, on how can I be better with the technical, tactical stuff. And whenever I'm in a situation, especially with Guy Malloy or with Jody and our Kahu team, it's thinking about what they're seeing, what strategies we're going to bring to the team, what the makeup of our team is, etc. So hey, I'm not there yet. I'm still learning, still developing, and every opportunity I get, I try and glean something from the coaches that I'm around.
I love to hear that you're constantly learning and evolving. I know as a young coach, I had my blinders on and I thought this was it and I knew everything. But once I dropped those things and then kept on opening my eyes to new things and really telling myself, no, I need to know more about that, then obviously your coaching can evolve. Can you speak about coaching your family? Like, again, your daughters, high profile athletes, all three of them coming through the grades. I know I had two sons and they were two different personalities, but you're dealing with three as they come through in the profile that they have. Tell us about, as from a coaching standpoint, how did you navigate those obstacles, if there were any, and who did you talk to about that to help you through those some situations?
I guess when Crystal first started coming through her representative stuff, that's when I got involved. A head coach shoulder tapped me and said, "Oh, would you come along?" And that was great. Like, the learning was great. Time was a big factor back then because I was still playing, but managed to work things around so that I could be there. And as she developed and as she wanted to get better in the game, then I thought, well, actually, I better put my hand up and do a little bit more than just show up to the odd training and help their head coach. So all three kids, obviously, I've coached in my time, and our biggest focus has been on foundation skills and fundamentals. And what I think they learnt a lot from, when I was playing, they'd be at my game. So they're very good observers of the game, and I would encourage them either to sit on my bench when I'm coaching other teams or just to come along to games and just watch. And I think that actually helped develop their IQ for the game. Heck, they even tell me now, like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And I'll go back to Crystal and Charlie Softon and even Tanika now and say, oh, what do you think of this? Like, how could we have made that better? And they're really good at communicating their ideas, and they have such a good feel for the game. So I guess, so part of that coaching for me when they were young was just having them be really good observers of the game and just talking about things like, what would you have done in that situation? What's a good play here? And, that discussion and making them think about it, I think helped develop their game too. They're also very good at watching video, that they'll sit and watch games and they'll pick them apart and, could have done this, could have done that. And for me, that's a skill that I had to learn too. I'm not so good at doing the video and the clipping and things like that. And like I said, I'm constantly learning. So I've also learned from them that video is such a good tool for especially our juniors. They want to see, you can talk to them about what you've seen, but if you can show them, it's so much more powerful.
Oh, absolutely. So, in this day and age, the screen is readily available. So that's something they're in tune to looking at and figuring things out. Now, you talked about being observers, your daughters. Were you someone of that when you watched coaches when you played, and do you do that when you're with other coaches as well?
When I'm with other coaches, when I played, I never used to take any notice of what was happening out on the sides. You know, coaches throwing their arms around or whatever. I was just into the game, so I didn't take the time to observe coaches on sidelines and how they were impacting games. What I probably observed more or looked for more was who's playing in my position, what are they doing, and how
Okay,
can
then.
I,
Yep.
yeah, how can I guess I was coaching myself in that regard, but I wasn't really observing coaches. Now that I'm in the coaching arena, it's different. So I will watch coaches, and you know, when a substitution comes in and I see how the momentum changes for good or bad, I'm like, I don't know why she did that, you know. So yeah, it is about just watching, and you know, I'll watch Guy and I'll talk to Guy and I'll listen to Guy and anybody else that'll talk to me and pick their brains about some of the things they do and why they do it.
Oh, that's good to know, because sometimes as young coaches we forget that as well. Like, because we're so in concentrating on our own team, what we want to do, we forget to just to sit and observe other coaches and their mannerisms and how they talk to their team, and obviously the technical stuff in terms of what they're trying to implement.
Going back to that, there are a couple of coaches now that I know, you know, speaking to that side, that I probably did watch, and I'd say, I know when this game's going to turn if I can make that coach start yelling at their team. And then, you know, you had that tension like, yeah, we're on it now, because
Yeah.
they're yelling at their team. So I guess there was a little bit of observation of that, like, you know, is the coach pacing, or are they pretty calm? And it depends on the coaches too. You got to know the coaches pretty well, what their mannerisms are like.
What did you learn in terms of how coaches dealt with different situations or obstacles? Not so much X's or O's, but obviously the players they dealt with, the teams that they had, the organizations they were with. Did you observe any things that how do they problem solve those sort of situations? And did you sort of take anything from there?
I think probably the problem solving, like if there were problems, the biggest thing that I noticed in the good coaches, or those that could impact their teams or even individual players, was if they had good relationships with their players. And because you can work through a lot of things together without headbutting if you've developed a good relationship with those players. So, you know, the better coaches and that I've observed have had that ability to draw the best out of their players, because they can get alongside them. They know what they're thinking, and sometimes it's what's in their background, like what have they come from, you know, and then having some empathy and having some emotional intelligence about that sort of stuff. So how do I relate best to these people? And, you know, even at the highest level, I sometimes see coaches where I think you haven't got the best out of that kid, or you haven't got the best out of that young lady. And I've seen it with a different coach. So you're always looking for ways to try and draw the best out of people. And so from a coaching perspective I think relationships and working through things together is crucial if you're trying to problem solve with players.
Do you find, I guess, at the Torfern space, because you get a limited amount of, I guess, time with them to build for a campaign, do you find that easy to reconnect or a little bit harder?
Well, we're quite lucky. Last year, probably even the year before, in our program, so we had 3 assistant coaches, and we were assigned 4 players, let's say if we had 12 each, that we had to connect with regularly. So it was just, you know, a Zoom call, you know, once a week, once a fortnight. What are you up to? Do you need help? You know, and so the reconnection piece when you're back into camp isn't hard, because you've stayed in contact, you know, throughout the season. And I guess I'm lucky, because if I'm looking at our Torferns team and some of the players that have been through, I've sort of had a connection with them at some stage, whether it be either playing against them, that's a long time ago, I'm thinking of Stella, or actually coaching them at different age group levels, or coaching against them. So there already is that little bit of a relationship. So, and then building on it. So when you do come into camps, sitting alongside them and what have you been up to? So, staying in touch is important.
Yeah, definitely. And I've noticed that through your teams. Obviously, you have a whether it be your rep team or your school team, there's always a relationship there where you're talking to them on the sideline one-on-one, and then they get out and they can perform and they can have confidence, which I think is really crucial. X's and O's is up there, but I think having that relationship when the wheels do fall off, you'll be able to put those things back on and send them in the right direction.
And just say, hey, it'll be okay. Like if things aren't going well, we're all right. We can get this done. Just slow it down, one thing at a time. Let's focus and we can move forward. So I guess that too, that's a little bit of trust, right? So the players have the trust that you've got their best interests at heart too.
And then the outcome's going to be whatever the outcome is, but that relationship is strong and it'll get you through anything. Now, you talked about when you were at Teachers College, you had a growing or started to grow a support network. Can you explain, do you have any mentors, or do you have someone that you can just flick a message to say, hey, I'm struggling with this obstacle or issue, I need a hand with it?
Look, one of the key people when I first started playing here in the Waikato was Carolyn Gray. And Carolyn Gray, I can go to any time. I mean, even last year, she would drive with me to kahu trainings. So I'd have a mate in the car. But she is a person that I can go to quite readily and say, I'm struggling with this thing. How would you handle that? And, she's had such a wealth of knowledge and experience within a couple of codes, actually, netball and basketball. So she's always happy to share her opinions. I used to, when Murray McMahon used to coach here in the Waikato, used to pick his brains a few times. And actually, when I was still playing, Murray would get three of us together, myself, Tania Tupu Brunton, she was at that time, Jodie Cameron, and train us. He would open up a gym and come and train us. And even when I was away at the Olympics, he would flick me messages and say, oh, this is what I saw in your game. So always there, just ready to support however, you needed. Other coaches, and I guess a message to our coaches is don't be afraid to ask someone. Like, coaches are pretty happy to share information and just have a yarn. So don't be afraid to just rock on up to someone and say, either, I'm having a problem with this, or can you talk me through whatever it is you want to talk through. So I think we're pretty lucky in New Zealand that we've got a pretty good network of coaches that are just going to help and support. Other mentors, when I was going through university, probably a George Salter. He was one of my coaches, easy to have a conversation with, one of the lecturers at the university too. Jodie and I, even prior to being coaching with the kahu, we coached age groups, we coached against each other. So she's always a person that, I can bounce ideas off, and she knows she can bounce ideas off me if needed.
And it's amazing. It's the coaches that I've talked to have been quite fortunate to have really good people around them to support them in that area. Like you talked about Murray McMahon, he was awesome in that space. He'd just rock up and talk to anyone and help anyone and give his time freely to people. I know Carolyn Gray is the same too. If you could just watch out for those elbows when she played those things are dangerous. But it's those relationships you build, not just with players, but with coaches. And I'm glad you alluded to coaches just go and say hello. If you just want to yarn and you want to chat, I've never met a coach who doesn't want to chat.
Yeah.
They always want to sit down and talk and help and support.
Especially about their own game, right?
Absolutely. They love talking about that. I was speaking to Mel, and there's a group within the Tall Ferns that it's like a support that Guy Malloy's sort of opened up for all the women coaches to chat. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's the beauty of Guy. He's more than happy to try and spread the knowledge. I guess it's a little bit selfish because if we do a job good, it's going to make it easy for him, right? So
perfect.
And he even opens up his camps to people to come along and watch. But there's another group that Mel Bennett, and when we were at the coaching conferences, and you'll remember, occasionally the women coaches would go off together, and we had a little group called the Whāriki Ho, and it was just a collection of female coaches that were prepared to every now and again catch up, have a little kōrero. Sometimes there'd be some, I know we did a couple of Zooms and female coaches came in and listened, and then when we were at big tournaments, Mel would organise somebody to host a little coffee chat group, and whoever wanted to, who was at the tournament, could come along and just talk. And yeah, just a really positive space for young coaches coming through, maybe to mix with more seasoned coaches, and then seasoned coaches just have the opportunity just to talk and share their experiences. Yeah.
I think speaking about that space, it's quite an important space for all coaches, young or experienced or seasoned, making sure there's a space just to sit and chat and catch up, because it's quite intimidating sitting in a room when the Tall Ferns assistant coaches are there, the Tall Black head coaches are there, if you don't know them. They're human beings as well. You can go and chat to them. So it's definitely a space that needs to be growing more across the country, especially in the women's space and coaching, providing support for them to do what they need to do to be successful.
Yeah. And I guess the power of it too is within that group, we know we're there to support each other. So there is no, dog eat dog. It's like we're just trying to grow everyone in a positive space. I mean, it's easy to say, go and talk to a coach. And I do remember the first time I went to a camp with the Tall Ferns, or our first campaign, that when I was an assistant coach, my first time. Jodie had been there a while. And Guy always sits in the room, and he sort of hangs out there by himself just before the games, like he just has his downtime. And I was like, I'm just going to stay in here, and I'm just going to ask him questions. And he's probably trying to formulate in his mind, he's going through.
He's trying to get his game day face on.
And I'm going, what are you thinking? And so he looks at me, and then he's explaining. I says, well, how did you come up with that? And so he talked about his process of how he prepares himself before he goes out to the game. Fortunately, I only had to do that once, and it wasn't a Asia Cup game or anything like that. It was just when we were in Aussie, so it wasn't a must-win game, so he could concentrate. But that initially was like, oh, how's he going to take it? Well, if I didn't ask, I mean, he could have said, oh no, can you come back later? But if I didn't ask, I didn't know, right? So you got to ask the question to give them the opportunity to say no.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're correct on that. But obviously picking your time, that's right. Not in someone's timeout or when they're having their team meeting.
What are you thinking?
What are you thinking?
What are you thinking? Oh, the whole team's looking at me.
Oh, my goodness. Talk to us about the kahu and how you're, again, the travel. You traveled up there all the time, and as a coach, you're quite lucky to have Carolyn in the car so you could chat hoops or life or anything up there, and your long relationship with Jodie.
So going back to Carolyn, so the other beauty about having Carolyn in the car is she is a mean cook. So she would always have either some snacks for us to travel up or some dinner to come home. So sometimes the ride up was like, oh, what do we got for dinner? But yeah, she just loves the game. She's always loved the game, and any opportunity she gets to still be part of it. She coached when she finished playing and coaching for Waikato. She went and coached a few school teams, and yeah, just amazing that she just wants to give back and be involved. Even here in Waikato, she helps run our little women's competition that we sort of set up ourselves. We've got 8 teams playing in it, and she's the one that gets to the gym and just organises everything, opens the gym up, and just makes sure that there's a space for women to play. So yeah, that relationship goes back a long way. And then Jodie and I used to play together in Waikato, and then she moved up to Harbour, and she played up there while I was still playing for Waikato. But became very good friends down here in Hamilton when she was based here, and then had the first opportunity to coach with her actually when she asked me to help her with the New Zealand under-18 girls team. And I guess this is one of the barriers or one of the struggles as a parent of somebody that's going through the program. Charlize was involved in the team, and my initial thought was, no, I don't want to do anything in that space because people will say, oh, she's only in there because of her mother. And, you know, it happens.
Yep,
And Jodie,
it happens at all levels, unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately. And Jodie said, well, look, you know, you don't have to do anything with her. Like, I will manage that space. And because Jodie's daughter too, actually, Keely made the team. And so she said, you manage that space. So it worked quite well for us. But, you know, we have very similar philosophies about the game in terms of the style we want to play. So that was all good. And then, you know, she has strengths that I don't have, and hopefully I can complement the strengths of her. So I worked with her at under 18s, and so we did that for a few years. And then the opportunity with Kahu came up, and she gave me a call and asked if I'd be interested in assisting. And hell yeah, you know, professional league, first time in New Zealand. Why would you not put your hand up and say, yeah, whatever I can offer, I'm prepared to you know, be on the sidelines with you and do what I can. So that's been a great journey, really enjoyable, still learning a lot, you know, and we haven't got the magic formula. We're always evolving ourselves and reflecting on each season, but definitely has been a fun experience, and especially to do it with such a good mate of mine.
Yeah, again, it's like a perfect connection in terms of, like you said before, you can just bounce stuff off each other, and then obviously come to a point where, okay, then cool, this is what we're going to do. Now, talk about how you went from being a head coach and then being an assistant, because that some people will obviously find that transition a little bit tougher, but if you're open-minded, I think it's a easier transition to be involved with.
Yeah. I've always been an assistant coach, so even coming through the rep programs, as an example, it might be Anthony Corbin coaching Waikato and being his assistant, or sometimes co-coaching, or sometimes I'm the head coach and he's the assistant coach. So that, so long as I'm in a space where I can be helping, it doesn't matter whether I'm the head coach or the assistant coach. It doesn't worry me at all. Yeah.
Because I think it's making sure, one, that you have a good relationship with whoever person that you're working with, and then you can navigate that space with not too many hiccups.
Yeah. I mean, as a head coach, you might dictate the roles a little bit. This is what I want you to focus on. And as an assistant coach, you take that on board. I think that's the only difference. But ultimately, both of you are working together for the same outcome, right? To help your team perform to the best of their ability, and making sure that the players you've got in front of you are still loving the game by the end of the season, that they're enjoying it. Because, you know, why do we keep coming back? It's because we enjoy it. We're so passionate about the game. But yeah, I mean, the transition from a head coach, like in the Waikato space, to assistant with the Tall Ferns or assistant with Jodie, yeah, it's just another great opportunity for me to contribute to the game and learn.
Yeah, and I like how you said, like, where can I add value to this group, and then fill that up.
Yep.
And then knowing where your space is, and then not letting your ego get in the way. You're just there for the greater cause.
Yep.
Awesome. Now tell us, being a busy mum, being a busy teacher, being a busy coach, across potentially 4 teams in a season, school, rep, Kahu, and Tall Ferns, what do you do outside the game?
Well, lately, 2024 is my year to make sure I'm looking after myself a little bit better. Getting out and walking. I do that quite often now. I've got some stairs not far from my place, so that's the first thing I do in the morning to get it out of the way, and then getting in the pool or getting on our stationary bike. So trying to do a little bit of personal maintenance, personal well-being stuff. When we are out of seasons, just reading fiction books, because when we're in season, we're reading playbooks and bits and pieces like that, or watching video and film. So, you know, just chilling out. This Christmas, as an example, just potted around home. So just made the most of just being still for a little while. And luckily enough, having family around me. So, that's my biggest thing when it is downtime, is just doing things with the family. Whether it be traveling back to my mum's place in Opotiki, or, going camping, not that I tent camp or anything like that, way past that, but, going
You
for weekends
sound like
with the
my
family.
wife. If we're going camping, it's going to be a hotel room.
I used to do the tent, but don't need to do that anymore.
Oh, that's good to hear, because obviously you can get consumed by the year, and just being in the busyness of stuff. And I've definitely realized that if you need to look after yourself first before you can look after anybody else, because that's the thing. Because if you're not well, then you can't give your best self to whoever needs you.
100%. And when I used to play, and I played for a long time, I loved being fit. And then, to be honest, for about 4 or 5 years, it just went by the wayside, because I haven't got enough time, or you make excuses. But I've just not that I've just realized, I've known it's always been important, but not that it's a New Year's resolution or anything, but this is a focus for me, is making sure that I am in the best position, shape that I can be in, so that I can give what I can to other people.
Thank you for that message, because I think all coaches need that message, to make sure that you put yourself first and don't make excuses. Just it has to be 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes of just you, and then you can refocus and get on with our day. Because I know the demands of not just coaching, but life can get on top of you. So making sure you can look after yourself.
Really good reset happened with COVID, when we all just had to stop.
Yep.
And what did we do in that time? We spent time with family, we walked around, we biked around, read books. I mean, heck, Charlie's was into meditation at the time, so we'd all have to get up in the morning and do our meditation and our gratitude journals and things like that. But such a good time. And I think since then, it's really emphasized how important it is just to sometimes be still and then focus in and make sure everything's going good here.
Yep, you're exactly right. COVID did provide an opportunity for people just to get a good reset. And like you said, we'd go for walks and spend time more with family, which was awesome. Quick fire 5. Okay, so I've got 5 questions that you got to answer reasonably. So we're going to see how this goes and see how good you are. Okay, so question 1: who was the best player you coached?
Oh,
You got about 20 seconds.
That's a really hard one, because if I pick one of my daughters and I don't pick the others, there's a fight in the family. So maybe I should pick a touch player. Oh gosh, that's a hard one. There's too many. I've coached too many good people.
Oh my goodness, you just coughed out on that one.
I know.
Okay, which was the best team you coached?
St. Peter's girls.
Nice.
I've loved coaching them.
Yeah, they look like fun too. They look like fun.
Yeah.
What was the best advice you'd ever been given towards being a coach?
I think making sure that you as a coach and your players are singing off the same song sheet.
Song sheet.
There you go.
Do you know who gave you that, or can you remember?
Yeah, that was Guy in that talk where I said, "What are you thinking?" And then he talked about a mentor of his telling him, because if you're singing off the same song sheet, you might have to change the song sheet, but so long as you're singing off the same song sheet, good things are going to happen.
Perfect. Number 4, which opposition do you enjoy coaching against?
Which opposition? Well, playing against Korea was pretty cool. So coaching against them, and I think for me too, I'd gone to a coaches conference in Dubai, and I'd met the assistant and the head coach of Korea, and we actually got on really well. So went to Asia Cup, and really friendly, and then beating them was pretty cool. Probably not for them, because it knocked them out, but Korea, because that's been the bogey team for New Zealand for a few years now.
All right, has it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, they've been on those playoff games to either go or go home.
Yep. So it's fourth. You have to come fourth in Asia Cup, and they've always picked New Zealand for that fourth spot until September last year.
Fifth question. If you could go back, would you be better than your daughters?
Nah, they're pretty talented.
I'm glad you
I'm
said
grittier.
that.
I would have been fitter. Maybe other than Crystal, she's pretty fit, but nah. I guess it was all their observation too. Their years of sitting on the bench, and they've been playing for a while. So yeah, nah, they're better than me. Don't play that to them though.
I'll edit that out. Last question of the podcast. Young Leanne Walker walks in. As a coach, what advice are you giving her?
Number one, make sure you're enjoying what you're doing and your team is enjoying what they're doing. Make sure that you're maintaining the mana of your players. So, if you have to have conversations with them, do it in a way that is not going to impact their performance and their self-esteem and their confidence. And yeah, I guess those are the two things. Make sure your team is enjoying themselves, and make sure your players, still have the confidence that they walked in with when they leave the game. Those are probably the two key things for me.
Cool. Thank you for that. Now, just on the back of that, when did you realise, especially the latter one, maintaining the mana of a player, when did you realise you needed to do that more?
I guess just in being around different teams and just seeing, and mostly girls teams. I haven't coached a lot of boys teams, but just seeing how girls' confidence can just be zapped so quickly. And, and watching, like I said, some coaches can get different things out of players, and a young lady can be playing amazing somewhere and then all of a sudden not so much in a different team. So what is it? And I think it comes a lot of their self-belief and their self-confidence. So if you can help them maintain that mana, like, you are good at this thing, keep that going, then I think that helps immensely in that space. So it's just observation of situations where I've seen young players just lose that belief in themselves.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Leanne Walker, for sharing your knowledge, providing a space for us to talk coaching, not just X's and O's, but the art of coaching and relationships of coaches, and making sure we can tap a coach on the shoulder and say, hey, what's happening? So thank you very much for your time. I know this year will get busy and busy, but as you're going up the motorway or expressway to Kahu, take care of yourself and make sure Caroline has those really good snacks that you like.
The healthy ones.
That would be good. But again, thank you for your time. You're a tremendous supporter of women's coaching. Definitely the person that I'd like young lady coaches to talk to, especially with your experiences. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug, for the opportunity. It's been a blast.
Thank you for watching and listening to Coffee with a Coach. You can check us out on our social media platforms. Also, check us out on our website. Big shout out to Silent Moves Clothing for hooking us up. Also, Kapu and Cookies for giving us our great mugs. Please subscribe and catch you next time.